Here's another sword review. This is the Austro Hungarian Saber, made by Universal Swords in India. It's a reproduction of a mid-18th century saber. It's offered at Cult of Athena for $218.95. That's US dollars. And for the disclaimer, Cult of Athena sent this to me as a free review sample. As always, I'll try my best to be as unbiased as possible, which I don't think you'll find hard to believe in this case because I'm simply not very impressed by this, quite frankly. The blade is made of EN9 high carbon steel, the same as the previous saber from Universal Swords that I reviewed. And that one was a little bit on the soft side, but considering the price, no big deal. It comes completely unsharpened. As far as I'm aware, Universal Swords does not offer a sharpening service for their blades. This edge was done by Cult of Athena. As usual with their sharpening service, I wish the bevel wasn't quite as thick and rounded. This is just inadequate for serious cutting, quite frankly. It doesn't work all that well. It's got etchings on the blade, which are quite a nice decoration. The etching in Latin names Count Andreas Hadik, a Hungarian general who became famous for capturing Berlin during the 7 Years' War. Apparently the text is already starting to fade in places, even though I haven't used it much, so clearly not very durable. The blade has a wide fuller, which runs almost along its entire length. The guard and fittings are made of brass, and the handle appears to be leather. The entire hilt assembly is peened, as you can see here. The finish is a bit rough here and there, which, to be fair, is easy to forgive in this price range. But what really bothers me about the handle are these brass pieces here. They are decorative. I'm assuming the original one has them too. I haven't seen it. And by the way, I know next to nothing about sabers from this period. They have never interested me in particular. So I'm just going by how this reproduction here handles. I don't know exactly how historically accurate it is. But in any case, this just feels really uncomfortable. These pieces here just stick out too much and are relatively thick. If they were flush with the handle, or at least somewhat flush, that would be a lot more comfortable. That really rubs the hand in ways it shouldn't. Gloves would help to an extent, but with bare hands, this just feels a little awkward. It might also depend on your hand size, maybe if your fingers end up kind of in between those, but for my hands, it's not particularly pleasant to hold, really. The handling in terms of balance and dynamics seems fine to me. A saber, of course, is supposed to be a little more top-heavy than some other types of swords, and it's still very manageable, so no problem whatsoever. You can do wrist cuts with this without it being too exhausting. So yeah, no complaints here. This definitely seems decent. It does have a distal taper. It's near the guard. It's 6.5 millimeters, and then it tapers towards 5.5, and near the tip we're down to 5 millimeters. Here's the balance. As usual, I'll post all the specifications down below in the video description. Here's the scabbard. It's a leather-covered wood core with plenty of brass fittings, which seem relatively thick, which makes it nice and heavy duty, but it also makes it quite heavy. In fact, when you have the saber in the scabbard, this is a lot of weight if you have to carry this around. It seems that, just handling it like this, to me it seems as if the scabbard weighs about as much as the saber itself. Again, I'll post the specifications down below, so that may very well be close to the truth. You'll see about that. But aside from the weight, I can't complain about the scabbard. It's quite well done, and it fits the saber really well. Also, it holds it in, even when shaking it around. So probably one of the best scabbards I've seen in this price range, around $200. So what is the main reason that I said I'm not particularly impressed by this saber, aside from how the handle feels? Well, this. I didn't use it much, simply because I noticed that the handle started loosening up pretty quickly. In fact, the first time when I did, I would even say semi-abusive testing. It wasn't even particularly abusive because I was just cutting at a wooden branch which wasn't even overly thick. And I didn't strike very hard. I started out, with fairly weak, limp-wristed strikes. Due to the edge geometry, it kept slipping off instead of biting into the wood. But after a couple of whacks, I already noticed that this has started to loosen up. The guard shifts quite a bit sideways now, and when dry handling it, you do occasionally feel that, which is rather irritating. When I did test cutting, that didn't really work too well. And it's not just me, the head instructor at the local historical martial arts club didn't have better luck either. Nope. It's really mainly due to the edge, which I can't comment too much on because, well, they just offer them by default completely dull or even outright blunt, because there is really no edge to speak of without a sharpening surface. So it doesn't seem to be intended for test cutting, even though it's supposed to be a functional reproduction. And if it's functional, I expect it to be able to cut. But yeah, that didn't work, and the durability really seems an issue. It's just the guard is simply not strong enough to do that. But if you're not looking to practice with it, this would still be a nice reproduction for collecting purposes. It's certainly a step up from a cheaper wall hanger because it does have some functionality. It's just limited. So no big deal really. If you just want something nice on your wall, then yeah, this would do the trick. It's definitely, in terms of appearance, it's appealing enough, and it's pretty affordable compared to other reproductions. So in that regard, yeah, this might be worth a purchase. For my purposes, practical use, no, definitely cannot recommend that. And that wraps it up. I hope you found the review helpful, and thanks for watching.